All right, folks, we're back. Looks like there's a good group of you hanging out. Hope you guys have been having fun. Couple of interesting things have gone on. This pick just now, Anthony Jennings. I really like this pick. It is just like the New England Patriots to take a versatile guy that they can use as a rusher, as a linebacker, and do something good with it. I would have liked to have seen him in Kansas City, not with this next pick, but definitely afterwards in the fourth round. I think that would have been great. See a lot of friendly faces. Hope you guys are having fun. Had dinner, got back to a little bit of this, and we're gonna get up to date on what's going on. Not a whole lot of run on the cornerback position. As I look at what's going on, Ojemudia, not really concerned about him. Wasn't a big fan for his fit in Kansas City anyway, so I think we're good there. You have seen a couple of safeties go. Ashton Davis went just shortly after we got off the last stream. Brandon Jones, I think that's a little bit of a reach there by the Dolphins. I had him lower down. We did talk about, if you missed the last stream for round two, we were kind of wrapping it up, looking forward at what we might see from the Chiefs in this next round. And we were talking about the centers, and Matt Hennessy actually went off the board before Cushenberry, who ended up in Denver. Both those guys are good players. They're good for the zone rushing offense. That scheme in particular fits them very well. Would have fit them in Kansas City as well. But like we were saying before we got off the last stream, it just feels like the Chiefs are pretty happy with their offensive line, and they certainly seem to be comfortable at this point. Could they do something here? I don't think there's centers left that are going to help them very much. We could take a look at the board here, and what we're going to see is that in terms of the interior offensive line, the top four are now gone. Damian Lewis actually went excuse me, ahead of Lloyd Cushenberry, his teammate. And I like Damian Lewis quite a bit. He's not quite as agile, in my opinion, in terms of athleticism, but he scored better in athleticism. I'm just not sure if it translates to the field. So I was a little bit above there, but you're going to see what we're going to see from him. And both of them, we're going to get a chance to kind of follow up on. Jonah Jackson, Ben Bredesen's still out there. You have Simpson, and I think a long shot for this Chiefs team, if you're really trying to push for an interior offensive lineman, is Nick Harris out of Washington. Underpowered and got a little bit beat up at the Senior Bowl, but he's a zone interior guy. He can get out and move. He's got to work on his anchor. He's got to get stronger. But that's just a function of where he is physically in his maturity. Hot and spicy, you're right. Shane Lemieux's another option there. I think he's farther down. Where do I have Shane? I have Shane, the next guy, down below Harris here. You guys should be able to see it if I can point it out. Yeah, so here's Harris at the bottom of the third, right? We're about where we're at, and Shane Lemieux in the next round. Again, both of them marked with the Z's on my draft board. You can get that at chiefsdigest.com. If you guys haven't, there's a post up there that's got it's a free download PDF kind of thing that you can look through. So both those guys are kind of in this range. Kevin Dotson is a stretch. I think he's more of a power guard, but he is a guy that's an up-and-comer on a lot of boards, and if you get him in the fourth, that'd be really interesting. So I think that there's plenty of room here. Looks like we're getting Dan Harms back, so I'll turn off the screen share momentarily. And welcome Dan back in. We're just looking for Dan. How you doing?
Good. Yeah, I'm a little tired, but waking up at 5:30 this morning was probably the main cause of that.
Did you get her back to sleep?
Yeah, she woke up, lost her pacifier, and found her way back to sleep.
And what about the baby?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So we're just going over the fact that Hennessy and Cushenberry that we were talking about before went. And there's a couple of guys farther down that could be offensive line options. I don't think that there's a ton. So I'm really focused. This has got to be defense. I think we all feel like the best corner available is Bryce Hall. You feel that way, right?
Yeah, I'm not that different between Bryce Hall and Cam Dantzler. And I think they're kind of interchangeable for me at this point. I prefer Dantzler's film from this year. Bryce Hall's film was probably better in 2018 than Dantzler's was this year. But we're talking about two guys on tape from 2018 for Hall and 19 for Dantzler that really popped on film. And if you don't know, Cam Dantzler absolutely shut down Jamar Chase this year. He'd shut him down. That's something that jumps out at me, and I get that we're not allowed to see the medicals for him going into the draft, so that's why he's fallen so far. I think if they would have known a little bit, he probably wouldn't be on the board. So we're looking at a possibility of something that I didn't expect possible, in some of these mocks with a guy like Willie Gay Jr., Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then either Bryce Hall or Cam Dantzler. That's a pretty good haul. That's a pretty good haul for them.
Yeah, and I guess we're supposed to stop talking about that. Jeremy, it's going to be okay. I promise you.
Yeah, he's probably right about
one
that.
Differential here. I know, right? That's why I put it up there. Jeremy
Reid,
calls a couple of things around here. For me, the difference is Cam is more physical in the way he approaches the game. In my opinion, I like that.
Yeah.
The combine was not good. I don't think that's his best time. I do think he's faster than that. But without the proof in your hands, I think you have to rely on what you saw from Hall a little bit more.
Exactly.
And quite frankly, I think in terms of playing like center field, playing off in zone, if Spags wants to get more back to zone, I think Hall's got better instincts in it, although it might be better suited for Dantzler.
Yeah, I agree with that. And unfortunately, with the situation he was in last year, with Breland and Ward, who played much better as up the line physical guys, we don't really know which way he wants to lean. And it's going to be an interesting. Now they have both those guys back. So maybe and Fenton, who I think plays better in a physical up against the line thing. So it's, there's really kind of any way he can go with this. And that's what I like about Spags is he can just kind of take what he's got and he can make it work and get actually the best out of him. And that was definitely something we saw last year.
Yeah. Darvin, I'm glad you brought him up because I was just going to move on to him. The two guys that I have kind of sleepers in this role are Troy Pride and Reggie Robinson, who's got a lot of length to him. I think Pride moves well, but doesn't play the ball as well as I would like. But I think they're both lower end options that might sneak in here because I haven't graded right about where we are. Do you have a preference for either of them?
I like them both in the third round, end of the third round, and really when it gets into this point, the corners are really starting to kind of meld together. And for at least for me, with the end of the third, end of the fourth, and some of them in late fourth, and we got guys that like John Reid, I think Reid out of Penn State, Robertson, and these guys are really going to start to be those next corners off the board. And I think that Reid is somebody that intrigues me quite a bit.
I agree. And I just want to point out, folks, if you missed that shot before of Andrew Berry in his office for the Browns, I do believe he has a copy of the Athletic Matrix on his desk. I did send it out to all the teams this year. I'm glad to see somebody's using it. So that's a nice little thing that I just caught live. Mr. Green, I want to make sure that I answer yours. Thanks for the super chat and supporting the channel. You guys, you can always throw those at me. If you do it, Mr. Green did, and make sure you ask a question too. I appreciate you putting this up, and please come back and ask a question because if you guys have something you want to know and you're going to contribute to the channel, I want to get you something for it right away. That said, as we move on, I still think this is a little early for Robertson and Reid. What's your take on Darnay Holmes? Are you convinced by the 18 film or the 19 film?
I tend to go more with the most recent, but the fact that he has the 18 film is that's something that you got to keep in your head because we talk about players like Grant Delpit who dropped off from 18 to 19. The fact that we've seen it on tape is more than enough, I think, to stake something in. And you can kind of like it was with Bryce Hall in 2018. He was probably one of the best, if not the best, corner to come out. If he would have decided to come out that year and he decided not to and come back and ended up hurting his draft stock. So, it's a lot of stuff you got to take into consideration. But I think that the fact that we can see it on tape and, some things happen in college, college, maybe his head wasn't screwed on tight enough that this last year or whatnot. But yeah, the fact that we can see it on the tape that it's there is something that I try to keep in my own mind, even though I do tend to look more at the most recent year that's passed through.
Okay, and that's fair. I can get with that. I was really surprised that Ojemudia went so early. I had him a fifth round guy or a low 4.
Yeah, I had a low 4.
Okay. Brandon Jones, same thing. I don't think a safety's really in this unless it's a hybrid. And so Robinson's a guy that's a corner converted from safety that's long. I think he's got the levers that the Chiefs like. And the other guy that reminds me of that is L'Jarius Sneed from La Tech, who played a lot of safety this year, but he's been a corner and a slot corner in the past too. Do you think the Chiefs are going to covet versatility here? And Hog Farmer, good point.
Yeah, I think that's they're looking at versatility, and when it comes to this team, especially the defense, they want guys that can interchange and be those Swiss Army knives on the defensive line and in the secondary. I think they covet that with Matthew, and they want to kind of bring in players that are going to offer more than just one skill set. And I think that's kind of the way the NFL is leaning towards, is we have all these different abilities now with the way the athletes are being built, wide receivers and tight ends, and everything's kind of changing, and having versatility everywhere on the field is probably the best bet, I would think.
Yeah, I like both those guys for that. I like Tanner Muse, but not probably till tomorrow. I have Sneed on tomorrow. Looks like we missed something just now, Dan. Jam Dantzler goes to Minnesota.
Yeah.
So that's narrowing it down, which tells me that there's still a little bit of question mark probably on Hall's ankle, because I think on tape I'd still take him over. We're what now? 7 picks from us?
Yep, we are 7 picks from us.
And this is the hardest thing about this draft. With what the Ravens and the Tennessee Titans are doing, there's always a chance they're going to take DBs. I really have absolutely no way to tell you what Bill O'Brien's about to do here.
No, there's no one knows. I bet you he doesn't even know until about right when he sends the pick in.
Maybe his kid sitting next to him has a clue. He looks pretty happy.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
Dad,
he told him who to
take
pick.
This guy.
Yeah. Let's see. Who did they get in the first round? Because they only had 1 pick, right? Or they didn't have first round pick. Second round pick.
No, they had a second. I don't know. Troy Pride's a guy that I'm interested in, but I think this might be a little bit too early for him. I can't see anybody. James Lynch is an interesting defensive lineman because Gallimore did go, you guys. I just can't. I don't know about Lynch. I'm not sure. Oh, and I just noticed I misspelled him on the board. It's not James Lunch. It's James Lynch. My fault.
Oh, I didn't see that either.
A really interesting guy, if they were going to go defensive line, is Lecky Fotu. I mean, if you want to give somebody else the line up next to Noddy and just eat offensive linemen.
Yeah, I can see them doing that too. That's the one of the things right now is the way the board is going. I'm not saying that they're not going to take a wide receiver, but I'm also not saying that they are, because it looks more and more like wide receiver could be an option here, especially if Hall is gone. I don't think that the value is there for corner. Chen did get picked, right? He did get picked. I don't remember seeing him.
I got to double check that.
Because that's something that I would, if he's still on the board, then that's definitely a possibility, I think.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't recall him.
Oh, he did
picked.
go. He went 64th right after we picked.
Okay.
Last. And I say we, folks. I don't usually do that. I'm getting tired. So after the Chiefs picked.
Okay. So, yeah, it's starting to get interesting with the defense because, I don't think they necessarily need to bring in another defensive lineman or a defensive end. Corner is the guy, is the need for past 2020. So they must really like the depth that they think of this corner group, especially if Hall's off the board.
What's your impression of Greenard? He was a sleeper for me, a guy that I think could play outside backer and D end.
I didn't actually get to see much tape of his. I was more up on Zabina, than Greenard. But I'm watching some of his clips right here. It looks like he reads where the ball's going pretty well. I like his ability to get off a block. He's got quickness, some power. I like that. Oh, I like the fact that he can get a hand on the ball too. That's what I like to see, guys that can tackle with both in mind, not to just bring the guy to the ground, but get a hand on the ball too. That's nice to see. So I
get something good.
Yeah, I see definitely some attributes there. 3rd round guy, probably going to be able to be productive, but he's on the Texans, so
yeah, it makes everything harder. Looks like the Patriots traded in with the Raiders again. I'd like to see what the compensation's.
And they're doing that. They keep going back and forth with each other, don't they?
They do. They got a thing rolling. Old Matt Derrick's back.
Hey.
Did you talk to Mr. Willie Gay? Oh, he can't hear me right now. Anyway, he probably doesn't know he's in here, so I'll put him on hold for a minute, let him get comfortable. I think I kind of jumped the gun there, folks. Matt probably won't really appreciate that yet. So there he goes. Devin Asiasi goes from UCLA, an interesting tight end, and now Matt's on and has his headphones in. I'm sorry about that, Matt. How you doing?
I think I can finally hear you.
Oh, I'm yakking either way. So
too many, working from the home office. Too many moving parts for this draft.
I get it. I heard Willie Gay was on as well as Andy Reid. What was your impression of Willie himself?
Sounds like a guy who really fits in with what the Chiefs want to do. He did address the problems that he had at Mississippi State. Said the Chiefs talked with him extensively about that. He really got a sense over the last couple of weeks that the Chiefs were interested in him. He had quite a few conversations with them on video chat. He felt like they went really, really well. And got the sense that, hey, if the Chiefs had a chance to land him, they were going to do it. He was kind of told he thought he would probably go in between the second and the fourth round. But it sounds like he definitely thought going at 32 might be a possibility. But he didn't think that the Chiefs were going to pass on him a second time. So when he got the call, he thought that it was the Chiefs that were coming to get him.
That's cool.
816 will give it away. That's pretty good. 32 would have been a little rich for that, but hey, what's Andy Reid's demeanor at this point?
Andy seemed pretty fired up about how the first couple of rounds have gone for them. He's obviously a big fan of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Couldn't speak more highly about him. Just says that he just jumps out. He's like, when you watch him on the field, he's consistently the best player out there on the field. Is really excited about what he can do with him in this offense. He feels like there's so many different things that he can do. You could tell there was a bounce in Andy's voice talking about this guy and what he could do with him. He's mentioned this before, but he feels like that he's a different flavor back from what they have. He's a different guy. He's a little bit smaller. He's going to be quicker. He's got more agility, not the size of a Damian Williams. So, he feels like he brings something different than any of the other guys that they currently have on the roster.
Well, that's a pretty good indication. More tools in the toolbox. He's not alone. A couple of his teammates have gone while you were busy with that. Cushenberry and Damian Lewis. A little bit surprised Lewis went first. This role just keeps continuing for LSU. Dan, who do you think might be the next LSU player to go?
I don't remember who they have all in the draft, to be honest.
There's only been like 20 of them selected so far, so I guess I don't blame you. These guys are quite on the roll. Many. It looks like the Ravens pick is in as well. I think they dodged a bullet with getting both the Texans and the Patriots to not do anything that I think the Chiefs were interested in. The tight end Asiasi is a really interesting one in New England because I think he moves pretty well. I think this is like fitting the bill of what they wanted to do. I'm still baffled that they haven't done anything at quarterback to this point. But Matt, the way that it's gone, Cam Dantzler recently went off the board. It leaves Bryce Hall as probably the top on my list. Do you think that that's still in the cards? Do you think the Chiefs have zeroed in on somebody, or are they playing the board at this point?
I think they'll probably be playing the board at this point. I mean, although they've certainly have the way that this draft's unfolded so far. I mean, they've certainly got somebody in mind. Who it is and what it is, your guess is as good as mine at this point. But they certainly have somebody circled that they want there. We'll see if it falls to them. But there's a few different directions they could go here at this point. Yeah, I think corner is one. I'm trying to catch up on who has gone so far. I think there's a couple of tight ends that I like that are out there. I still think that's a need for this team, but especially just for keeping the show going. If you were to ever lose Travis Kelce, offensive line remains an option. That's a certain need. I think it would be one of those handful of positions that they've got to be circling at this point.
I'm going to give you a softball before we get back to Dan. Tell me about Albert O, because he's got to be one of your tight ends, right?
I need a Mizzou guy in that locker room, man. I need another Mizzou guy in there. Albert O is an interesting player because he's got the size, he's got the athleticism. You look at him, and the guy just consistently gets open. I mean, he looks the part of a starting big tight end in this league. The production just hasn't always been there, and it just makes you curious about why it hasn't been. As a Mizzou guy who follows the team closely, I mean, I kind of think that a little bit of it is just that I don't think the coaching has been great the last few seasons at Mizzou. So I think they've kind of underachieved. Maybe that's part of it. There'll be people that tell you that maybe he just doesn't have the fire that he needs. That's a question. I mean, that's going to be a concern for any team. But athletically, physically, the kid's got the tools. Absolutely.
It reminds me in general of what I've seen from Mizzou the last few years. Physically talented players that come out that are underdeveloped in terms of their skill sets. That's the impression that I get. Honestly, that's why I had Elliott fairly low as well. But I think Albert's the next Mizzou player to go, in my opinion. Dan, do you see anybody else jumping over him?
The only guy that would be just Jordan Elliott. I think he's got a lot of physical tools too, and I think that you're 100% right about just not the developmental process hasn't been there. And I am not 100% positive about this assumption, but isn't the last time that Mizzou's offense has been good was Chase Daniel was at quarterback? Like has been, or not like elite level ish? Because I know that Drew Lock was pretty good. Their offense there. I don't follow the team that closely, but Matt would be much more knowledgeable on that subject. But I would say that Elliott has a good chance of leapfrogging Albert O as the next Mizzou guy to go.
Well, Mizzou was D-line Zoo. I mean, that's what we hung our hat on there for a while. We're cranking out Alden Smith and Marcus Golden and a few other guys. But that was also when Mizzou had defensive line coach Craig Kuligowski, who was just an absolute master. Now, he didn't get along with Barry Odom, so he ended up leaving. He'd spent a long time with Gary Pinkel, and when he was with Gary Pinkel, Mizzou always had a defensive line. I mean, that was what they just hung their hat on. They could get after the quarterback, and that's been missing. I mean, they've had the recruits there, but like you said, they just haven't been developing. Jordan Elliott's one of those guys too. I mean, you look at the film and he stands out.
Evidently, I am not paying enough attention because somewhere between Can Dantzler and Anthony Jennings, the two that we were talking about, Jordan Elliott went. So, sorry, guys. He's in Cleveland now.
Okay.
Thanks for pointing that out, Casey K. I appreciate that. So we were on. He was the next guy to go.
I told you he would.
Yeah, right.
I was getting ready to tell you that.
I feel like the Texans. I feel like the Ravens just did something pretty remarkable. I didn't expect him to go so early, but I really like his tape. Devin Duvernay is going to be an underneath target for Lamar Jackson that's really going to stress what the Chiefs could do with Willie Gay or whoever they task as a safety to try and cover their underneath guy. Any opinion on what he means to that offense? Either of you?
Yeah, I think that Duvernay is a speed guy. He's not exactly the best hip in and out of route guy that I've seen, but he's definitely going to stretch the field. He can stretch the field, and that's the problem that we're going to see with this Ravens offense. Is now you have Hollywood Brown, who they're probably going to be more of their vertical threat, and then if they bring Duvernay underneath, then you've got some issues in the middle of the field that they're going to want to exploit with their tight ends and that kind of thing. So now you have all levels of the field that the Ravens are going to be looking at, and Duvernay can take it, a 5-yard drag route or any kind of in route and just take it to the house. He's got that kind of speed. So they're definitely trying to start, the track meets just like the Chiefs do, and now that the Broncos are trying to do and the Raiders are trying to do.
Yeah, Matt, I mean, I think it's been kind of quiet. We know what the AFC West is doing, but I think the Ravens are making a push to increase their offensive output by quite a bit as well.
Yeah, I really like what they've done with their draft so far. I think Denver's had a really good draft. Miami's got 18, picks, so they should be having a good draft, and I think they are. I think there's a lot of teams that are, doing pretty well for themselves so far. And the Ravens, I think the real concern is that, the Ravens are, they're a team that you're going to have to deal with, and I think they're a lot better right now than they were before this draft started. Yeah,
it feels like everybody's making progress. It's a good thing to be the Super Bowl champ, it's a difficult thing to repeat as one. And I think what we're seeing is that everybody else has a lot more positions they can make improvement at. The Chiefs are being very targeted because they don't have a whole lot of holes. I think they're going to address one of the other ones here as they come up here now in 3 picks. They have Green Bay, who messed them up last night, and Denver before them at this point. So we'll see what that comes of. But I, at the end of the day, feel like they have to put something on the defense in order to help it a little bit more rather than looking back on the offensive side. Matt, am I off, or are you with me on that one?
No, you're not. I mean, that's why. I mean, if there's any position that stands out to me right now that they need to address, it's cornerback. There are some. Yeah, I'm now getting to catch up with some of the picks that have been made of late, and I mean, the guy that stands out to me. I mean, yeah, you got Bryce Hall, which I don't get a sense of how the Chiefs do feel about him. He's been a divisive guy. You know, some people are really high, some people are really low. The guy I like that I mentioned earlier that I thought was, second round was a little bit too high, but now might be the time. Amik Robertson, Louisiana Tech, he's out there. I think he would be a good fit. Yeah, Alberto, I would definitely be okay with that because I need a Mizzou guy. But yeah, I mean, right now, given what their needs are and looking at the board, cornerback's the best position available. I mean, there's a couple of different ways you could go.
I'm not going to start pushing Akeem Adeniji yet, but he's the only KU prospect that is likely to get drafted. So we'll talk about him tomorrow. But here's what it comes down to for me. I feel like as much as I liked Diggs for his length and what he could do in this defense, I feel like Reggie Robinson is an option there too. I think Troy Pride has to play outside. I think Amik, and we talked about John Reid a little bit earlier too. I think they're both nickels. So let's start with Dan. If you're being very specific, like we see the Chiefs being so far, are they looking at outside or are they focusing on a nickel corner right now?
I think that they have to kind of look more towards the outside because Breeland's on that 1-year deal, unless they plan on bringing Rashad Fenton to the outside. Then you can start to look at that nickel corner because I think he does profile a little bit better on the outside, like you suggested yesterday. And if they were talking about just Breeland having to be here this next year and then he's not going to come back, and then you still have Ward and you want Fenton on the outside, and then you can bring in like an Amik Robertson and have him play that nickel corner that I think he would be he would fit ideally for this defense. He's physical and he runs with receivers really well. He's got good speed, athleticism, all that kind of thing. So I think that if they're projecting Fenton to go more towards the outside, if Breeland doesn't stay with the team, then that's where I would go with that.
Makes sense. Matt, how do you see the inside-outside discussion?
Yeah, I think you're right there. They've been projecting Rashad Fenton as the inside guy since they brought him in. Really like him. In the handful of snaps that he got last year outside, they actually did like what they saw. So I think you could see him, playing a little bit more on the outside and experimenting with that this year and just seeing what they've got there. The real need is nickel. That's what this team needs, and they could certainly use someone to play that Kendall Fuller role. Maybe that's Fenton, maybe it's somebody else, but you look forward, and yeah, you need an outside guy for 2021 and beyond. And if Fenton's not that guy, then that's what you probably need to start looking at right now in this draft.
Yeah. And I like Robertson, like I said. I think we're all in on that. His style of play is great. Gets his hand on a lot of passes. I said it right that time. And the other guy that I think is really interesting and does a pretty good job in defending passes, but is a much better athlete, is John Reid. And I think he's flying way under the radar. Another guy that I feel is small enough and shifty enough to go inside and play in the nickel. It's another option in there. I just feel like if they're going to stay outside, I don't want to see him go anywhere near Stanford Samuels. And I feel like the guy with the next kind of length that they can take advantage of if Hall isn't there or they're just not happy with him is Reggie Robinson from Tulsa. Mm-hmm. If we're looking at, I know a lot of folks are saying double down on the linebacker situation because Malik Harrison is still there. And Matt, you talked about him earlier. I don't think that they can afford to do that at this point. I think the secondary needs help still, and that's got to be the focus, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, even though, there are some question marks about the linebacking group, long term, I think that's a little bit too much. Hey, I like Harrison, but I think him and Gay are probably just a little bit too similar. And, I don't know if that's really where you need to double down. I mean, if you're going to get a linebacker, I think you probably need to get somebody who's a little bit of a different flavor, as Andy Reid might say. But yeah, I mean, to me, you've got bigger needs than another linebacker that you've got to try and squeeze in. And I come back to what we keep talking about a lot, which is that this is going to be a compressed off season. You've only got so much bandwidth for getting these guys up to speed, and flooding the linebacker group with a lot of rookies. It's gonna hurt the development of both of them if you go that route.
That's a fair point. And what we do see is that I think the Green Bay Packers did something a lot better this time. DeGara, the tight end, nothing the Chiefs need to look at, I don't think. I have him well below Albert O on my board, so I think we're safe there. A lot of folks asking about Troy Pride. I do think he's a good player. I think he's a fourth rounder, though, guys. If they choose to double dip, I think that they can possibly go haul here if the Broncos don't steal him out from under them and come back and look at Pride with the next pick if they want to try to get two corners that they feel that they can develop underneath and behind Breeland and Ward. Beyond that, I don't think there's any way that we're really looking at anything on offense. The offensive linemen are okay. I just don't see anybody that pops to me.
Yeah.
Could this be a wide receiver if they feel that they get super value? It's a possibility, isn't it?
Hey, I'm never gonna rule out Brett Veach and Andy Reid taking offense. I mean, so far there's been shown no limit to how much offense they're willing to take.
Yeah, a couple of guys that stand out to me. KJ Hill's still out there, I believe. Mm-hmm. He's the last guy that I have in the third round that's still available. And then if you dip down to the top of the fourth, I've got Antonio Gandy-Golden and James Prochet as two guys that I really like that could fit and do different things in this offense. So there's a couple of names for you guys. Looks like the Broncos pick is in, so we're really close to being on the clock, folks. Anything else that we could cover? It's too early for Jason Strowbridge, even David Hamilton. My guy Marlon Davidson did go last round, and I am a little sad to see that. I was crossing my.
He went pretty high in the second round too.
Yeah, frustrating. Never mind. Darnay Holmes is an outside option for the nickel cornerback. I think it's too early for him, but that's just another name I want folks to start getting used to because I think tomorrow his name's going to be big in there, as well as the two safeties, Janarius Sneed and Tanner Muse, that I think are fourth rounders that could get moved up just a little bit because I think they both can play different roles. Muse more as a nickel linebacker and Janarius Sneed as a cornerback as well. The versatility thing raising its head again. If the Broncos would just make the pick, we could start talking about that. But I want to get back to one thing about Willie Gay, Matt. I saw a couple of interviews with him pre-combine. Obviously, I've never interviewed the guy, but in your impression, it feels to me like Willie Gay is more in attitude closer to Frank Clark than he is to, say, Anthony Hitchens, who he's going to be learning a lot from. He seems like he's got some edge to him, even without the off the field things. What's your impression?
Yeah, the word that Andy Reid used was reckless, that he's got that same, dog mentality that Tyrann Mathieu and Frank Clark has. And that's they kind of, we immediately grouped him in there with the attitude that he's got and what he plays with. So, yeah, he plays with a little bit of swagger, a little bit of edge. He was very impressive in the conversation he had with us a little bit ago. And he addressed the issues that he'd had in college, straight on, didn't avoid them. The early impression I think is very positive that he made with his first interviews. And he certainly seems like, and from what I hear, he certainly fits in with what the Chiefs are looking for, because I've heard from people going back to high school that this guy's a leader. He's somebody that teammates like, that he loves football, that he's got the right attitude. Clearly he's made some mistakes, but if he's willing to straighten those out and the Chiefs feel like they've got a locker room that can help him out, then that could end up being a really good pick.
Yeah, in a stand-up room like that, I like that possibility because I know, Dan, you are really big on Frank Clark as well as Tyrann Mathieu. You've got dogs at both ends of the defense. I just feel like Anthony Hitchens is more of a steady influence, more of a Midwestern guy. Like, I don't feel like anybody at the linebacker level really has that kind of edgy attitude. I think this really fills in the middle of the defense.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I said it before, his play style lends itself to that. And I love that Andy Reid used reckless because you watch him play, and when he sees something, he it's exactly what he does. He shoots and he fires, and it's just with reckless abandon, 110% effort. The dude's just flat out energy all over the field. So I definitely love that added element to the linebacker core, and I really hope that it kind of rubs off on some of Hitchens and Wilson, because that could really help them, I think, get back to at least Hitchens get back to what we thought we were getting in that middle linebacker.
Yeah. The Broncos have chosen, it's McTelvin again. Solid DT. Yeah, I think that's interesting. Again, the Chiefs are quick. I'm seeing stuff in the chat. I'm not sure if I can go with that. I certainly hope. I don't know. I'm gonna slide over here just to show you guys.
From what I'm seeing, I don't think you guys are gonna be happy. But
is it a wide receiver?
No,
it is not. And if it is, I just want to point this out real quick, so you guys have an idea of what it means. For those of you that are in the chat, I'll zoom in a little bit here. Not to give it completely away, but there are a couple of guys down here, again, as we talked about earlier, that you might want to prepare for the future. There's several of them that I would choose, and you can see how they're stacked here. The bottom are very much injury questions, and that becomes something important. Let's listen to what Andy Reid, or I'm sorry, Goodell has to say about what Andy decided to do. And thank you, Twitter, for ruining that pick for me completely. So this is what it is. Luke Niang, a guy that's got some versatility, that's got some athleticism, but has a long and sordid history of injury. I think this is a redshirt year, basically, is what you're going to have to do. I can't remember what his surgical date was. I want to say it was mid-season, like week 6 or 7. So I don't think that he's going to be completely recovered. At TCU was an interesting play. He's got a nasty streak to him. They're going to show some replays here. I might as well put it back in on the feed. I'm a little bit surprised by this. I would not have actually taken a chance here. Matt, what's your instant reaction?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it. I mean, this is, I think, a guy who, if he's not a red shirt, I mean, they're not counting on him being a contributor this season, so I'd be really surprised if he saw the field. They've brought in Mike Rimmers to be kind of the swing guy, so I think he's in place to be the swing tackle if they needed one, if Fisher or Schwartz was to go down. So, yeah, I mean, Niang would be there to learn. So I don't think that he's a guy who's going to make an immediate impact, but we do talk about the fact that this team does need a swing tackle for the future and somebody that they can groom to be there if, Fisher or Schwartz moves on or declines in play. You need somebody to develop. So, I mean, this is clearly a guy that they believe they can turn into something. Big size. I mean, got a lot going on there. But, yeah, I mean, the injury, that coupled with everything else, I mean, no, this is not a guy I think you're counting on in 2020. You're hoping that maybe he can be a swing tackle or contributor in 2021.
All right, Dan, let it out.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the developmental tackle / swing tackle was something they were going to look at. I didn't expect it to be in the 3rd round. Man, we're both these last 2 drafts. We all thought that cornerback was relatively high on the needs for the Chiefs. Like, does that seem about right? Everyone kind of had that inkling, and then last year, they wait till the 6th round to get Fenton, and now we're past the 3rd round, and no corners taken. So I think that Niang is definitely a good developmental guy to have on the team. I'm just not sure that 3rd round was the spot for it.
Yeah, I got to say, I'm a little I'm a little concerned about his long-term prognosis in terms of ability to be on the field. The whole availability is your best ability thing. I do want to point out two things. And when it comes to offensive linemen, I always measure athleticism by how well they move, mostly in a box, folks. I don't try to get into 40s or anything like that an offensive lineman has no business doing. But there's two stats that I really look at as a projection of how well a player can move on to the NFL. And first is the clean pocket percentage. And that is how many pressures are not given up, how many snaps he doesn't give up a pressure on. And he's middle of the road, Niang is, in a conference that is challenging at best to say defensively. But here's the big thing. When he does give up pressure, Niang has a 0% sack percentage. And I think that does tell you that when he gets beat, he has ability to recover and not get his quarterback killed for that. That may be something that really locks down how the team sees him being able to bend and not break, so to speak. Matt, is that play into an evaluation for you? It's pretty balanced run versus pass percentage.
Yeah, it does. And, the other thing I do wonder about a move like this is if this is a player that the Chiefs feel could, initially start inside and later kick to the outside. That's always a possibility. Now, I generally feel whenever that's the case, that the player, if they do move to the outside, it's not usually that successful. They're never probably as good as they were as they were at guard. But I wonder if this might be a possibility with the Chiefs that they would consider that, because they do have some needs inside. I think there's a bigger immediate need in the interior. So maybe he could compete at that left guard spot. I think I'm not sure he's the right size for it, but
that's my point. I kind of like the idea of a 6'6", 315, but I want to run the ball and nobody listens to me. I mean, does Helaire change that though? You tell me.
No.
Dan says no.
I would agree with no. I mean, if Hilaire's running behind this guy, you're never going to see Helaire. I mean,
so
right.
Here's the new plan. We're going to draft a bunch of guys that are 6'6" plus. You can never see where he's going ever.
Can't tackle what you can't see. That's what I'm saying. Oh, this is not what I was expecting to talk about tonight, folks. Let us know what you think. I see you in the chat. It's okay. No reason to get upset. It's going to be all right. It's like they just won a Super Bowl and everything, but definitely not what I saw coming. So let's reset real quick. Clearly, the Chiefs don't care about cornerbacks anywhere near as much as I do. Matt, does this signal to you that they're happy with the crew that they have, which right now has to include Alex Brown and Antonio Hamilton playing snaps? That seems just whew.
Yeah, I still don't know how much it, and I see are the Ravens going for Malik Harrison that just, could.
Oh, you called it ahead of me, even. I like it.
That could just not be more Ravenish.
Right?
Goodness gracious. I mean,
oh lordy.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
That's a big problem.
The Ravens now have the linebacker core I wanted.
Yeah, that's a problem.
That's Ravens. The rich get richer, right?
I can't imagine that, given Brett Veach's philosophy, that he's sitting there and just content with what they have at corner, because he subscribed to the philosophy that you can never have enough guys that can cover. And, it's not that you need 2 or 3 guys, you need 4 or 5 guys. Mm-hmm. And they're not even anywhere close to that right now. I think that going linebacker, now tackle in 2nd and 3rd round, probably speaks more to the fact that they just didn't like the middle part of this cornerback group. I mean, I think there's probably, like I kept saying, I think there was 2 or 3 top corners that they liked. And then you get into the and the guys who are going to be in the 2nd to 3rd round, maybe even the 4th round, they just weren't fans of. So maybe they do circle back at it. I mean, they did it with Rashad Fenton last year. Maybe there's a guy that they think has a lot of upside that's going to be there in the 4th or the 5th round. But I think this middle part of the cornerback group, I'm just not sure they were sold on.
Clearly not. I wonder if that comes back to the Amik Robertson discussion, looking at 4th-day guys that they feel right now, with the 3 that we've discussed in Breland, Ward, and Fenton, that they have the 3 that they're willing to start, and everything else has got to be developmental. I think folks, for you asking about Bryce Hall in particular, I wonder if it's not the injury that is driving him down, that folks just aren't comfortable with where he's at rehab-wise, especially not having your doctors be able to examine him this offseason. In corners in general, I think maybe you're right, Matt, that they don't value what they see here, and if they take developmental guys on day 3 and they work out, they're happy for it.
Yeah, and I'm always really interested to see what happens after the 3rd round and going into the last day, because it's not unusual to see a lot of activity early when teams, step back after round 3 and then really reassess the board and see where they're at. And the Chiefs are in a position where if there's somebody that they like that's still out there, somebody that they think is maybe a 3rd round talent, maybe even an end of the 2nd round talent that's still there in the 4th, now's where your time where you do talk about maybe going to go and move up, because it's not going to cost you a ton. They don't have a lot of resources as it is, but moving it from into the 4th into the early part of the 4th round is doable. I mean, that's something that wouldn't be a huge cost. So I could see them at this point reassessing the board and seeing if maybe there is a corner at this point. There's somebody that they like, and if that's the case, now's the time to make a move and maybe try and jump up there and grab them early on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I think too. Dan, who are you going to target if that's the case? We have a few compensatory picks here coming now.
Yeah.
And Jacob Phillips went. Sorry to interrupt. Jacob Phillips went, a guy that I had in the 4th round as a backup linebacker if they were going to double dip there. Good for him. He's the other LSU linebacker. Go ahead, Dan.
That's who it is. Okay. I know there was one other linebacker. I just didn't know who it was. I'm a little, I guess, if they thought that the middle of this corner group wasn't where they wanted to go with it, then I guess I'm a little confused with the running back in the 1st round. And I get that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was their guy at running back, and trust me, he's my RB1 too. I love everything about him on tape. It just makes me a little confused as to maybe they didn't think any of the top corners were worth it in the 1st round, and then they were just like, well, we're going to go ahead and just get what we can and make do with the 4th. But yeah, I think Amik Robertson is going to be a target, especially if they're going to go for that nickel slot. And then maybe if Bryce Hall falls far enough, maybe they take a chance on it. I don't. At this point, who knows? His medicals must be really worrying people, and I understand that. I completely get it. But there's clear, 1st round, 2nd round talent in his there's that guy going for you. Tanner Muse gone.
Yep. That was a guy that I thought would be a sleeper that would easily be available on day 3.
I thought he would be too.
I have him just barely below where we're at now. I want to say mid 4th is where I have him on the board. That's too bad. I think he's a project worth developing, to tell you the truth. But Tanner Muse is now who took him?
Jet.
Oh, the Raiders, of course.
Oh, the Raiders did. No, that's right.
Something else to throw at the Chiefs. Matt Pert went. Obviously, Matt's Malik Harrison. Man, I hope you enjoy the next time the Baltimore Ravens are the opponent, so you can get to meet your guy.
You watch Malik Harrison and Patrick Queen out there. My goodness.
They're just gearing up for the next 10 years.
This is a revamp, and this is what I'm not even going to talk about it.
He's so mad.
That was my day 4, like punch him in the face sleeper. That was the guy I was looking for. Oh, that's too bad. Matt, I know you got to go hear what Brett Veach has to say. I look forward to seeing what you have as your take from that. Thanks for jumping on here.
Absolutely. Great catching up with you guys tonight. And
yeah,
if you're around tomorrow, we'll check in.
All right.
I'll be here. I'll let you know when and where.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Take care.
All right. Good night, bud. This is where I'm at. I'm not going to say I'm angry. I am confused more than anything. Like you said, with the running back first and then coming back for not just an offensive lineman that I don't think is a terribly great fit in the zone run scheme, but the injury history is significant, and I'm concerned about that. I'm a little off. Again, you didn't get to examine the guy. I'm a little off there.
Yeah, no, I said I haven't done extensive review, mostly because he's been injured. It's hard to pick up on a guy that's as injured as often as he is. But I do know that he performed well against Chase Young and Nick Bosa at Ohio State, against Ohio State. So there's at least something there that I think the Chiefs want to develop. And if we're talking about, the next tackle, one of our next tackles, because, both, Schwartz is getting older and Fisher he's gotten better, and he's at the point now where he's probably plateaued. And I don't think we're going to see Eric Fisher getting better. So now we're starting to think about the future of protecting Patrick Mahomes. And I get that that's an obvious need, and I would never suggest, don't try to protect Patrick Mahomes. But we're talking about a developmental tackle, possible swing tackle in the third round, who I don't get it. To be completely honest with you, I think you could have gotten him probably in the fourth round, or even more developmental tackles later in the fourth and fifth round that you didn't need to spend on a possible, a corner that you probably need more than you needed a developmental tackle. So it's a little confusing, and the running back in the first round kind of makes it more confusing, because then if you weren't comfortable with the middle of the cornerback group, then why did you, lend yourself to that situation, I guess.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. It comes down to, I think, all of this, when we look at, and we can recap from earlier, you were happy with the Willie Gay selection, right?
Yeah, that's a really good pick. I think that's a great betting on upside, but not also a floor talent who is, I think if he would have, started multiple seasons and shown tape, he probably would have been a first round linebacker. So this is a good pick from him, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. And like we were talking about earlier, for those of you that weren't here earlier, he brings some edge, super athletic, very much a guy that fits what they want. Yeah, they got to mold him a little bit to get there, but I think that's really what it's about. And then here, I like what Niang does when he does it. It's just the availability is the question for me. I am happy to say he was picked exactly where I had him on the board. I just didn't expect to be in Kansas City.
Yeah.
There's a lot still. There's a lot of meat left on the bone, and I do want to go over this and show you guys real quickly. And for those of you that will be hearing this on the rebroadcast on the podcast, when you look at the day 3 level, and the way that I run the board is you'll have totals here on the far end of how many picks, how many prospects I have at each round level, let alone the position. And the most picks in terms of where their value is for me is in the 4th round. I have 5 safeties, 4 corners. You don't like that, huh? Okay.
No. Just the Seahawks first round pick is in the 4th round for you. It makes me laugh.
Absolutely. And I'm sticking to that.
You should.
4 corners. Let's see. Troy Dye is still on the board, so there is a linebacker at the 4th round level that I still have out there. Jennings went, Taylor went, Alex Highsmith, Elton Robinson, 2 guys that are smaller, more agile pass rushers are out there. DJ Wanham's a long shot, by the way, from South Carolina. But right now the Chiefs have 2 picks, and I can't see him spending on any of their other than the secondary. And maybe I'm just repeating the same thing over and over, but that's kind of where I see it.
They're not going to take
we have to take the rest of the offensive linemen off the board at this point because they've gone and drafted Niang. They cannot double dip there. If they do, there will be some splaining to do. What else could they even possibly consider? There's still Thaddeus Moss. I know a lot of you are big fans of him. So, yeah, that's where we're at. So,
got to be secondary or wide receiver. That's probably it. That's all I can see them even thinking about drafting. If they go outside, if they draft a tight end, if they draft a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman, I think we're gonna have some words.
I can understand that. Let's run down the wide receivers for tomorrow real quick while everybody's still on. And folks, you guys are doing great. We got up to 700 tonight on day 2.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Over 5 right now. And Dan, thank you for being here. It's
no
been
problem.
Great. Let's talk about these wide receivers real quick because I know you've done more film on them than I have. I've done basically a game or 2 on all of these guys because I just didn't have as much time.
Yeah, I get that.
Gandy Golden, you're okay on? Yes?
Yeah, I think he's a great day 3 guy. Great day 3.
Okay. Prochet, I'm big on. How do you feel?
I didn't get to see Prochet, to be honest with you.
He had a great Senior Bowl. Part of that evaluation is hanging on that, just so everybody knows. Donovan Peoples-Jones is the second best athlete at the wide receiver position in this class. I have him in the 5th. Let's see. Duvernay went. Bowden went. Gibson went. We have Coulter, Hightower. Anything specific on those guys?
I didn't see Hightower or Coulter, but we got a good chunk here with Donovan Peoples-Jones, Colin Johnson, Tyler Johnson. There's a really good a cluster of wide receivers that fit what the Chiefs are looking for in 2021 as an X receiver. Bigger guys that I think both Peoples-Jones and Colin Johnson have better feet than they're given credit for, especially Colin Johnson, who's 6'6", and runs actually pretty good routes for a guy who's 6'6". I like his footwork and his catch radius. Peoples-Jones is, unfortunate for him. He's one of the best athletes in the class. Just did not have consistent production in college. Had terrible offenses, bad quarterback play. A lot of things contribute to that. So this is why he's falling. But I was most impressed with him and his limited snaps on the outside in press coverage. That's something that I value very highly, and he has really good handwork. And then there's Tyler Johnson, who I thought would be a little bit more of a third-round question mark to me. I thought he could go in the third round. He's got a ton of upside, and I'm personally not sure why he's falling into the third day. But maybe it's just the 1 year of production at Minnesota, and it's Minnesota. It's not a great place to come out of for wide receivers. So I think that right there is a chunk of those three guys are prototypical. Then you got Quintez Cephas and maybe Jawan Jennings out of Tennessee, who's really another big guy that can go get the ball. So there's actually really good value. And right now I'm looking at wide receiver in day 3. So still some really good receivers out there.
Lipscomb has moments as well, and so does Quex Watkins. Again, another misspell on my part. Sorry, guys. Not big on Joe Reid, but I think Freddie Swain popped to me every now and then too. So I think if I scroll down here, I can show you guys the highest positional depth in this draft for me was 33 in the wide receiver group, followed by the corners.
Yep.
So there still is a good group there. Not the group that I expected. Right now, it's pretty much honestly this order: Pride, Robertson, Reid, and so on and so forth. Folks, that's what we're going to see tomorrow, is my guess. But that's what I guessed at today too. So gotta be. If it's not, we're just going to sit here and cry. It's going to be all right. But
we'll find something to talk about.
We definitely will. Folks, thank you for being here tonight.
Yes,
Dan, thank you for being here tonight. You can find all of Dan's work over at Arrowhead Guys. You can find Matt's work at ChiefsDigest.com. I don't know if I'm going to do a write-up tomorrow over there or not. You can still get the board if you want to see this in person, and you can have my write-up from CEH that's over on Chiefs Digest as well. The podcast will probably be a repost of what we just talked about. I'm going to try to get Chris to get his comments as well. So look for Locked On Chiefs to come out late tonight sometime and ready for tomorrow. And I will notify everybody via Twitter tomorrow when we're going to be on, but think of it'll be a lot like today. We're going to hang around, wait for the Chiefs to pick, and tell you what we think. So, Dan, if you could be here, that would be great. If not, you just get me, folks.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I actually have already done both reviews on Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Willie Gay Jr., both at arrowheadguys.com. You can find them both there. Luckily for me, I did reviews on both of them already, so
nice.
We got some picks there.
Well, I appreciate it. And you do great work. Folks, make sure you check out Dan over there at Arrowhead Guys. Hope you guys have a good night. Have a beer. I'm going to have 4 or 5, and we'll see you tomorrow.